What's up, everybody? We wanted to take a quick moment to remind each of you to please like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast. Tommy,
Ring that bell.
ring the bell. It goes a long way to support the podcast. Besides that, Tommy and I offer online coaching. The links for that will be below. The link for my merch store will be below as well. And without further ado, we bring to you a Thinking Man's podcast. A Thinking Man's podcast. What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of A Thinking Man's podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph PIRCHER. With me, as always, my good friend Tommy Stiles. Tommy, what's up, buddy?
Joe, how we doing? See, you're back in Texas.
Back in Texas. We're doing this episode is going to be a Q&A for the people. So thank you for everybody that wrote in, had questions. Even if they were on older YouTube videos or episodes or just different questions that some of you have sent us along the way, like via Instagram or whatever the case is. We appreciate it. Tommy did a good job of going back and fielding some of these questions. So we're going to try and get through as many of these as we can. Of course, with me saying that, it probably means that we're going to ramble on at most 5 different questions, but let's get right into it. So I know that you had a couple of good ones. So Tommy, I'll kick it to you. What was the first question that you got?
So this gentleman wanted to know, is bodybuilding harder or the cold?
It's a good question. It's a fair question. Man, I guess it's just going to come down to how cold and what type of person or what your personality is like. So being from Jersey, we got like a full taste of all 4 seasons. But winter is definitely like pretty brutal there. Pretty routine to get like hit with some good snow. So if you're prepping and now you have to get up instead of at 6 in the morning, now you have to get up at 5 to like go shovel your car out to go make it to fasted cardio. That's something to consider. And then inevitably you're going to reach a body fat level where you're cold all the time, regardless of the climate, which can be really brutal when it actually is freezing out. So for me, I've talked about it on this pod. I hate the cold weather. I hate the snow. I hate the winter. So I moved. I got the fuck out of there. And bodybuilding, I'll tell you this, bodybuilding in Texas in the sun all the time is awesome. I haven't been through a prep yet. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. But it's great. I go out for walks all the time, get my steps in. Simultaneously shirt off and catching a tan, so that's always nice. And I just find it, for me personally, I find it a lot easier to remain optimistic and kind of maintain I would say like a positively balanced just general mood when the weather is warm and the sun is out. So for me it's kind of a no-brainer. I would definitely rather be in the sun than in the fucking snow.
Sir, man. There's no amount of heat that would get me to complain like I do in the cold. What is it getting? What are the temperatures out there in Arizona right now? We just touched 115 last week.
Holy fuck.
It's consistently, 105 plus right now. So
I was going to say that's what we've been hanging out at 105 here. And same deal. I just got back from Jersey and it was like, there were days that it was like, 90 and maybe like 90% humidity. And that I don't fuck with that either. Like that humidity is like oppressive. So I tell people like, I'm telling people back home that it's 105 in Texas and I'd rather be there. And they're looking at me sideways. But that dry heat, man, I would so much rather that. But 115 is wild. So how was it, prepping wise? Like, do you feel like, like sweating and all these different things? Like how was that first prep that you did when you were out in Arizona? Because you're originally from the Metro Detroit area, right?
Right.
What's the difference there? Like tons of snow, I'm assuming, up in Detroit, and then 110 in Arizona.
Yeah, same as you. Michigan gets all 4 seasons. You get to experience thing, and that's great if you like all 4 seasons.
Sure.
I only like 1.5 of them, so I was really at a disadvantage. Prepping in the heat. What's my mentality? It's just it's kind of like an indirect motivator. Like, man, it's hot as hell, and I'm prepping, and it's so hot out that you don't sweat outside it because it rates before it like drips off you. So it's just a mindset thing. I'm never like, I don't enter the heat and just mentally go, oh damn, it's hot. Like, yeah, it's hot. It's going to be hot for the next 4 months. That's how it is. And the trade amazing it is the other 8 months of the year when everyone else is pummeled with snow and cold weather. Same as you, man. Sunshine is medicinal. It makes my mood go through the roof, and realize how much I needed the sun until I here and like, man, I was kind of angry and no reason, just like everyone else. Like it's just so gray. So
it is.
For me, it's an up for the heat for the rest of my life. I am glad that I grew up in a cold weather atmosphere, because I think it made me work harder. It built my work ethic. I think there's something to be said about, like you said, having to shovel your way out of your driveway to go do fasted cardio, having to let your car warm up for 10 minutes just to get on the road. Like there's something to be said about what that does to you. But as you get older, like, dude, my joints appreciate the heat way more.
The hard winters, cold winters, the snow, I think that definitely does harden you to a bit. It kind of makes you, from an early age, understand that you have to just be a problem solver for yourself. Like no amount of complaining or bitching is going to get my car out from under 3 feet of snow. Like I just need to be about that action and go out and shovel it out. So, yeah, man, there was times in my last prep. I remember specifically, like it's, my big Monday leg day. Fucking 6 weeks out from a show that's in the spring in Jersey. And it's like, fuck, my work day ends and I literally need to go out and spend an hour shoveling my car out of the snow just to go to the workout. So it's like, dude, I already felt completely fatigued and tanked to where like that workout was going to be a motherfucker to get through. And then now you're shoveling yourself out. So it definitely builds some resolve, I think. And also there's like that, almost like that Dorian quote where he's like, he had to trudge through the snow and all he could think about were all the guys in California with their Ferraris and their sunglasses and what have you. So I tried to always channel that. It always seemed like I wound up prepping through the heart of the winter. And I kind of wore that as like a little badge of honor. Like, I'd go to Thanksgiving and to Christmas and prep and have my food and, wasn't eating off plan and, all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, now that I packed up and did what I needed to do for myself, it's fucking way better to be in the sun. So, good question. Interesting question. I got one here. So, I could go a couple different ways with this. All right. So we'll go, controlling for digestion. Are cream of rice, grits, and cream of wheat basically the same thing?
I think so. As far as the breakdown, go with your preference. I use grits simply because of iron content and the cost is much cheaper. All three digest fine for me. So there's no benefit to eat any of them done wise. They're all fine. I guess the one thing, if you could add a fourth to that, like oatmeal is the one I have digestion issues with. So those three all work fine. Just go with grits personally.
Yeah, you got me on the grits a couple months back. Well, to answer the question, I would say as far as like similar macros and volume and how you're going to prep it and all those things, yeah, they're pretty similar. Cream of rice, grits, cream of wheat, definitely all pretty similar. Like you mentioned, I think the iron is a consideration. For me personally, my ferritin comes back low on my blood work, so I actually intentionally stick with a lot of cream of rice because it's loaded with iron. I've been having to use a fortified white rice, jasmine rice lately to get that iron count up actually. But if yours was high, like we see pretty often in bodybuilding, it might be a consideration to use something else. Like, a lot of guys just pound cream of rice and it's pretty loaded with iron. So, that could be a consideration. For me, if we're just talking preference, I love cream of rice and the way that it cooks. And I do like the whey bowls where like I make the cream of rice and then mix whey in, peanut butter in, whatever. And I'll pretty much do the same thing with grits. And I like that there's like a little bit of a switch up to the consistency there. Man, cream of wheat, for some reason, it pretty much is the same thing. It seems. I just feel like a dirtbag when I eat cream of wheat. So I shy away from it for whatever reason. It just doesn't sit good for me. And it never mixes well. Like the consistency is never good. And I just feel like I'm like really poor and like eating porridge or something. So I don't fuck with it, but yeah, you definitely put me on the grits, and you were saying the cost is much less. Even down here in Texas, things are much cheaper than like being back in the Northeast. But one thing that I have noticed besides the price is the lack of availability for cream of rice at a lot of places that I go to. So I've been getting the grits pretty often.
Yes, I mean, barely find it here. You got to Amazon it most times.
What, the cream of rice?
Yeah, it's hard to find.
I've seen some guys making their own where they'll put if you have like a tight little like ninja blender, guys will just load actual rice in it and basically food process it. I don't know. I can't vouch for how that comes out when you're cooking it, but I've seen some guys do it. And it makes sense. I mean, it's literally just rice. So all right, that's an interesting one. What do you got? We'll go back and forth.
All right. What does it take to be a full-time bodybuilder?
Oof. It'll take your life. I mean, you gotta to be a full-time bodybuilder. Now, is this asking like you're making money from being a full-time bodybuilder, or you're just living the lifestyle? Because you would need a pro caliber physique first and foremost, I think. But as far as just living the lifestyle 24/7,
to live a life where you can be a full bodybuilder.
Yeah, well, then you got to make some money. You got to make plenty of money. It's not a cheap sport. Not only do you want to make plenty of money, you want to make sure that there's no expense that's outside of your budget, meaning health expenses, whether that's health insurance, whether that's paying out of pocket for blood work or echocardiograms or a calcium score test, going and getting one and paying out of pocket for it. You want to be able to get top flight or top quality health supplements that will help combat some of the negatives from using PEDs. Obviously, you need to be able to afford PEDs. You want to be able to afford a good coach. Otherwise, you're undoubtedly just going to spin your wheels. And it takes you curating that life. Like it took me 10 years of living like this to finally like one little decision and one little course of action at a time created this whole thing around bodybuilding so that it would facilitate me being a full-time bodybuilder. So, if you're in college or right out of college, it may be a little bit of a process for you to feel like it all fits. In college, I should say, time and scheduling flexibility are on your side, but most of the time you're broke. And then you leave college and enter like the workforce. And at that point, you probably have some money, but then time and scheduling flexibility are not on your side. So it will just take some time to develop harmony between the two of them. Obviously, if you really are all in on this, you need to have a job that not only pays for all of this, but allows you to eat on a specific schedule. There's a lot of jobs out there that just make it very difficult. And I would be lying if I said some of these jobs where it makes it it makes it difficult to reach what your actual potential is going to be. So like, physical, like site construction, or I have guys out here in Texas that work in the oil fields. Like that's some heavy duty stuff. And that's pretty certainly going to take away from your bodybuilding. So it just takes a lot of small decisions and kind of cultivating a life that is going to facilitate bodybuilding.
Yeah, agreed. I think for me, it was just once I decided that I was going to be a bodybuilder. I didn't even know that I wanted to be a full-time bodybuilder. When I made that decision, I never let anything, jobs, relates, people, things that other people my age were doing, vacations, buying. I never let any of that before bodybuilding. And then like 8, 9, 10 years under your belt, like, wow, every single decision I've made as an adult moving into like next decade of my life has been about bodybuilding. So this is what I'm doing. This is a part of my identity. This is what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And then next thing you know, like coaching, I left my career. So I did, like you said, it's just one small calculated decision at a time. Like we've talked about this before. It's outwork and outlast. Time management's huge. If getting it together enough money to funding and still be paying away for retirement and like having a life outside of bodybuilding, basically every minute you're awake and not training needs to be devoted to your main source of income and then side hustle. I don't think enough people cap on the amount of opportunities there are to make money right now. Like, don't be the typical bodybuilder who thinks they're just going to sit around all day and eat your meals every 2 hours on the dot and then just go back to watching Netflix. Like, dude, I make my own schedule, eat 10 to 12 meals in my car each week because I'm on the go and it's time to eat. Or I take a cooler with me because I got an appointment somewhere and then I got to go back to the gym for a client. And you know what I mean? There's just figure out a way to make it happen. But if the decision to be a full-time bodybuilder, you just find a way to make it happen.
Yeah. And it's, I feel like we're maybe oversimplifying it, saying that it is just a culmination of a lot of these small decisions. But those decisions, though, in the moment, a lot of them are going to wind up being pretty difficult. Like, I think we've both talked about it. I know I've talked openly about it on our podcast, on John's podcast. Like, for example, like being in a bad relationship, like you're choosing every day to stay in that type of environment that is holding you back from doing what you really want to do. So, now I'm not saying like you have 3 kids and a wife and an established family, and at 35, you want to start pursuing bodybuilding. Maybe it's not the time to like trade in the family for your bodybuilding career. But, for these guys and gals that are coming up early on in their journey, all of these staples of your life, your job, your significant other, the friends that you choose to spend time around, the podcasts and shows and movies that you invest your time into watching and listening to. If you're really all in on this, all of those things are going to have to be actively facilitating this lifestyle that you live. I'll go as far as saying even like something like a job or a relationship, it can't even be neutral. It can't even just be like, oh, like I make it happen around my bodybuilding or, whatever. Like, I make bodybuilding work with my relationship. If it's a person or a job that isn't like actively supporting it, then you need to get out of either situation. Because if you're really about this, you'll never see what your full potential is if you're stuck in a relationship or a job that doesn't actively support this lifestyle. So it's just a handful of big decisions along the way that you have to make that, your decision with these choices will show you how much this really means to you. Like if you're able to kick a bad job or get out of a bad relationship because it's holding back your bodybuilding, well, then that's a good indicator that you're really about this and you probably have a future in this. On the flip side of it, like if you don't want to give up your restaurant job because you fear change or, you're scared of what might to come, or, you don't want to lose the stability of it or what have you. I think that's fine. I'm not telling anyone to go quit their job. But like, if you just settle for something that you're not passionate about at the cost of the thing that you are passionate about, if this probably wasn't meant for you to begin with.
I mean, the very simplest way to know if like full-time bodybuilding is for you is as simple as just training and nutrition. Do you ever let anything get in the way of training? Like since I was 12 years old, just 5 weeks of training because I got my appendix out. That is it. I have never voluntarily taken time away from the gym as a competitive bodybuilder. Other than that appendectomy, zero time from the gym because I need a break, or I'm just not feeling the gym. Like no matter what, if I got off work at midnight, going to the gym, if I still had to go, that's why I have 24/7 gym memberships. Even if I have to be up at 7, like nutrition wise, like if I get all my meals I need from, if I'm traveling, or like, oh, I'm going to be out of town for 3 days, I guess see what I can do and eat protein bars. Like it's always been a priority for me, even when I know that it meant to me to be the best I could be and execute. So if you're doing those things, I think the decisions about relationships and jobs will just flow to that. Because with like, man, I got anxiety if things got in the way of not being able to train and do nutrition the way I wanted to. Like that was just,
it's the worst.
It's been important to me since 23. So
yeah, that anxiety though, and that I have always referred to it as like a level of guilt. Right. Is probably a good sign that you are about like that you are made for this because you care that much. Like, we were talking about traveling, like, I was just home, like meaning I went and stayed with my folks for 10 days in New Jersey, and I nailed everything, all my PEDs, all my food, training, all of it. I'm even traveling to gyms to train on specific pieces so I can objectively improve on these things. Even so, the entire time, I just couldn't wait to get back to Texas, like in my routine. I'm like, had this level of anxiety and guilt the entire time. And it's kind of neurotic and it's kind of a sick way to live, I think. But I just feel out of sorts. Even if I'm 100% on paper, you still feel like you're a little out of sorts. And it's like, you just can't wait to get back. So if that lives inside of you, then yeah, it's probably a good sign that you're cut out for this. That's a good question though. Insightful question. Kind of a quick hitter here, but always good to touch on some training stuff. Best bang for your buck exercise or exercises for quads?
It's been a deep press and the pep squat. So that's, not everybody has access to one of those. I didn't for years. So if you have access to one, I've got results with the pendulum.
Yeah. This is kind of a diplomatic answer, but really it's just whatever exercise you can get into, like a completely flexed knee. Because it's different for some people. I've seen some people that, get into a hack squat and they bury it to the floor, and then they get into some type of like maybe 45 degree is usually pretty problematic for some people, 45 degree leg press. And they can't get all the way down. And then it's like, okay, we should probably allocate most of your time and volume towards this exercise that you do get all the way down. For me, I feel like I built a large chunk of my quad foundation just barbell back squatting because my ego was just insane. And that was just a big part of my identity. When I was a kid coming up, I felt like I was like the baddest motherfucker in the gym because I just went in and back squatted everything that I could for as many as I possibly could all the way to the floor. Of course, a lot of that is just a lot of ego. But I do think that there's something to be said for that. With that being said, I was built structurally pretty well to barbell back squat. Like I have a buddy of mine, Gary Turner, this is somebody like, for years did the same thing, like just would squat heavy, barbell back squat. Because, that's the dogmatic thing. You got to squat to have big legs. And he did that for years and didn't have big legs. And it's like, okay, well, you have long femurs, you have short shins, you have a wide torso. Like, he was never meant to barbell back squat. So then we, for example, with him, like, we got him on a hack squat and had him drive his knees over his toes, get all the way down, and all of a sudden he's got really good quads. So, best bang for your buck, I'm assuming then too, if we wanted to get like technical, bang for your buck would mean highest SFR, so stimulus to fatigue ratio. Not to nerd out on everybody, but I think in that case, probably you would, as a bodybuilder, favor something braced over a barbell back squat. So like something like a hack or a leg press. For me now, for the last, 5 years, my main movement is just whatever hack squat that I have available to me in the gym, if it's a good one. If not, I try to jimmy up a good leg press. I usually have both in the mix. And I think if we're talking like ultimate physique development, I'm going to get in the weeds on this. Sometimes these questions are a little silly, where it's like, pick one exercise for the rest of your life. Like, no, I'm going to do a handful of exercises. But I would say for complete quad development, I have seen some research that would lend you to believe that having like a single joint, shortened focused movement, like an extension would do you good in the long run. I've always had those in. I've always felt like they were good for me. If it's something that bothers your knees or you don't feel like you get much out of it, then I would just avoid it. But yeah, I think just, nothing groundbreaking here. And your bread and butter hack, leg press, anything that you can get full knee flexion with under load, generally going to be a good thing. You're next. I'll let you go.
Yeah, I'll follow it up with another training one. This one's from YouTube. What are your thoughts on volume required for working sets? Initially start with a new client. This with how we go, and it's about.
Sorry, can you read it again?
What are your thoughts on volume required for working sets when you initially start with a new client? So you just took somebody on.
Yep.
I'm guessing we don't even need to like dive into context, but how do you go about setting up a training for someone that you just took on volume wise?
Okay. So I would say, first off, the needs analysis is going to be where everything starts and begins. Like, what ideally, if that person has stage picks, you would judge it based on that, not how they look right now in off season or coming out of a rebound. Body fat and water can kind of skew what actually needs to grow. For example, on stage, for me, it's very obvious that my arms need to come up when I'm in stage conditioning. When I'm chubby, my arms hold a lot of water and fat, so they look okay. So that would be a difficult assessment for a coach to look at me. So stage picks would be the best starting point. From those stage picks, you're going to find, this is my process, I find the body part that most needs to improve, and then the body part that least needs to improve, like your best body part. So if you have one of these in each side, like one extreme where you have one body part that really needs to come up, but you have one body part that's awesome, I'm going to essentially cherry pick from the volume that I would have done on this awesome body part. And I'm basically just going to pick it up and drop it in the bucket of the weak body part. So as a standard, let's just say across the board, working sets, every body part, let's say 12 working sets, just as an arbitrary number. But this person has killer legs, awesome quads. Maybe they only do 5 sets of quads over the course of the week, and they hold or grow their legs on that. Let's say their arms big time need to come up. They're a major, major priority. Okay, I'm going to take those 7 or 8 sets that I didn't do on quads, and over time, I'm going to sprinkle them into that weak body part. That doesn't mean I'm going to do 20 sets for arms right away. But I might start with 15 and run through a training block, see how it looks. Are we recovering? Are we getting pumps? Do the tape measurements seem to be improving? All these different things. Okay, that's our response. In the next block, I might do 16 or 17 sets of arms. And you're kind of just sprinkling in this total volume into like the weaker buckets, so to speak. So over the long haul, it should be that total workload that your body's taking on should be around the same, because we can only really come back from so much. But it's more of just about like pushing which body parts get the volume. So yeah, that's how I would go about it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. That's exactly how I operate as well. So I'm going to answer it kind of like if I had a curve, because this happens. I'm sure you get a lot of these clients too.
Sure.
The first thing I do, because they'll give me what they're doing for training, is I take volume away, because they're like a lot of people like us when we were younger, they think more is better. They're frustrated with lack of growth, so they do more and more and more. And it's like, I'm training 6 days a week. I'm doing 32 sets a session. I'm like, holy shit.
Holy fuck. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I've been there. So, we're going down to 4 days.
Yeah.
Chop the volume in half for everything if it's overly high. And then let's just see what happens from there. And then kind of just follow the process. Does a strong bar to emerge because we took volume away? Like, all right, that volume can probably continue to go lower as needed. But I find I have a lot of newer people who've never competed, so they don't have stage picks to give me. They've never been lean. You know, a lot of their feet is just it's that of a new person. It's like they don't even understand how to look for feedback yet. So these are the people I call greenhorns, and I appreciate them because it's like working with my previous self. It gives you the opportunity to build someone from the ground. So when I assess volume that way, most those people are more is better. And my goal from there is to teach those people intensity and training, how to execute one perfect set of reps, 10 reps, 12 reps, whatever the number is. How do I, connect to my target muscle, stuff like that. So, I think it's important, like you said, if I have someone like who's got a few shows under their belt and like they've been living this life a while, let's see stage picks and let's really get down to the nitty gritty and build an awesome training plan. Person that doesn't have the stage picks, you're probably, I would bet 9 times out of 10 you're doing too much, and you haven't learned how to give 100% effort in the gym yet.
Yeah, that's a great point that I didn't think about touching on. But yeah, I think most of the time you could do that, man. Not even just people that are new, but just, man, I cannot tell you how many people that I've gotten that are like, yeah, I've been training for 10 years. I've done 6 shows, this, that, and the third. And then you're like, all right, send me a single arm cable pull down for your lats. And they send you something and you're like, holy fuck, like this is not even close to what we need to be doing. And, they're like, oh, I struggle to bring my lats up. And you're like, send me a video of every movement that you do for lats over the course of the week. And then they send you 3 movements. They're like, I'm doing fucking 8 sets over the course of the week on each of these. So I'm doing 24 sets total. And it's like, poof, okay, not one of these was even close. So we're going to do 3 sets of workout now. And this is how it's going to look. And then all of a sudden, like they send you feedback midway through the first week and they're like, dude, my lat is cramping. Like I've never felt like this before. So a big thing when it comes to determining volume, of course, is like, how effective is that volume? So that was a great point. I think my answer was kind of just assuming that everything is where it needs to be. But I think that your course of action probably should come first, where you take a look at how their training looks. And man, most of the time, like if someone has a body part that isn't good, you'll see why in their training. Like you see it point blank. Absolutely. Like, so then like you clean that stuff up, you might be in a spot 6 months down the line where you're getting progress and pumps and all these different proxies all of these things are so much better than they were 6 months prior. They've grown. You physically see it in the photos, and you're still doing less volume than what they came to you with. So that I think trumps all. Like execution and intensity really should be first and foremost before we start talking about some of these like larger volume numbers. I'm kind of calling it a live audible here, but did you happen to grab my buddy Scott left a question on one of them like weeks back, and it was like a long question, and I've been kind of hoping that we would touch on this again because it was good. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
it was like kind of asked like which.
I'm on YouTube right now, so I remember what episode it was.
It's not the Q&A episode because I just looked.
Okay. You got a quick one while I look?
Yeah, I got it. Let me see.
I found it though, so you can ask that quick one and then we'll roll with it.
Okay. So I had someone that asked, how common do you think Synthol use is amongst the top pros today?
More common than most people think. You just don't know it.
Yeah.
Which is good Synthol use.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I would say not even Synthol specifically, SEO, site enhancement, oil or substances, however you want to say it, I think is like much. See, I agree with your answer from our perspective, but then I also have heard of people that think like every pro is loading every muscle with site enhancement, which is not the case.
Right.
I would say, man, this is such an opinionated and difficult question to put a firm answer on. I would say, let's say that there's, I don't know, 17 guys that qualify for the Open Mr. Olympia. I would be pretty surprised if they did a anonymous survey and at least 5 of the guys hadn't put something into a body part. There's at least 2 that we know for sure are. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a couple more others. And I think that the average person, or like maybe the novice bodybuilding fan, would be surprised how good it can look. I think when people think of Synthol or site enhancement, they think of like that Russian guy that's over there that's just like loaded up.
Think of the extreme YouTube cases.
Yeah. Or even like we've all seen a guy on stage with a funky looking shot coming out of his delt or something.
Yeah.
But man, I have seen some like, and I'll be totally honest. You guys know I'm honest about everything. I personally have not yet used site enhancement oil. It is something that I will do my next prep for sure. I'll definitely use it in my arms. But I've seen some people.
I got a bottle in my cabinet right now.
What are you using?
We'll
talk about it after.
Yeah, never used it, but I'm right there with you. There's a bottle in the cabinet.
No, I'm gonna let it fly. I'll send you. I came across a pretty good protocol that John and I discussed. That a handful of people that we all know have used to very surprising and visual success. We'll talk about it after, but it's guys that you would never guess use them.
Great clickbait, dude. This episode's gonna go nuts.
And it looks really good. I had always like totally dismissed it in my mind. Like, no, fuck that. It looks wacky. It looks crazy. It looks obvious. How much benefit could it even really be? Dude, I've seen some pics and some photos of some different guys that I would have never guessed were using it. And it's like, yeah, their arms are noticeably better. Or like, or even like side delts, where if you get, there's a couple of the brands that the substance does a pretty good job of like dispersing and not just sitting. You get something like that and you use a side delt, like use them in your side delts for people that need them, it makes a pretty tangible difference. So knowing that, having my eyes open to that, and that's just me at the amateur level. I think a pretty good amount of people probably are using some stuff, but those guys are also, you have to think the majority of those guys are like the best that planet Earth has to offer. And they probably don't need it. But I do think that it's probably more common than people think.
All right, buckle up for this one because it is a lengthy one. All
Let's do
right.
this.
You can only choose one of the following. Number one, PEDs have an effect on your health. Number
So
two, food.
no negative effect on your health from PEDs.
Correct. Number
Okay.
two, food does not matter. You can eat whatever you want anytime. It somehow meets your macros, except for 6 weeks until your show day. Day after show onwards, it doesn't count. You could fast all day and still be perfectly in your macros and have no detriment to training or physique.
Okay. So basically, you're just eliminating food as a need for bodybuilding.
Right.
Okay.
Number three, train however you want. And it's like you're doing what's optimal.
Okay.
Number four, you get perfect sleep every time, no matter the conditions.
Okay.
Number five, you never get injured or sick.
Okay.
Lastly, you can do any normal life stuff and it doesn't affect your bodybuilding. Example, 2-week vacation with family, etc.
Okay. Man, knowing that we have an audience and like there's like a lot of people that listen to this that I feel like get good information from us or like good like long-term guidance. There's a certain way that I should answer this, but I also feel like it would be completely disingenuous. So I'm going with the drugs, dude. Anybody that's in bodybuilding that tells you otherwise, the only thing that I could think of, knowing how food is for you, I could see you picking not having to worry about eating food and still getting to your goals. And that would be a hell of a budget decrease if food just didn't matter. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure then that I would even feel like I was bodybuilding if I didn't have to pound the food or starve when you're in prep. Yeah, like the health, like the acute health, as far as like never getting sick or injured. I mean, that's kind of just a risk that everyone, like we deal with that on a daily, and other than literally right now, I'm almost never sick. Yeah. And then what was the other one? Like going on vacations and shit. Like I feel like you can go do that.
I was gonna say you just did it.
I just did this and it didn't affect my bodybuilding at all. So
yeah, so that one's,
man, I'm done with drugs because I would just blast drugs. Like if I knew for sure it was not going to affect my health in the long term, and it was like you can just do this, and then once you're done with it, you're just done. You're off scot-free. It doesn't take a moment off the end of your life. You're going to live until 80 and be healthy.
Yeah,
I'm banging fucking drugs then, dude. Like no two ways about it. I'm banging all the drugs, like all this, like safer
no
use
PCTs,
model.
no
dude,
cruise
all
periods.
This shit that me and John are trying to put out for people, like safer use models, lower risk models. All that shit goes out the window. If I can just bang drugs, man, I'm cruising on fucking 4,000 milligrams of test, and let's see where that starts us. This is also an insane hypothetical, and I'm an insane person. So for anybody listening to this, take that with a grain of salt. This is not reality. But fuck, if you give me the choice, man, I'm gonna hit the gear hardest. Like instead of like having to be strategic and say, okay, if I'm on this, I don't use any of this. This will set up my, this is neurotoxic. If I could throw all that out and just blast drugs, yeah, I would. I mean, I'd undoubtedly look better. Like I'd be a better bodybuilder in a year. But usually you don't do that because then you're going to die in 3 years. In this case,
it's Russian roulette. So yeah, I mean, I love as
what
much as like. I mean, I wish I could dissent and choose different than you for entertainment purposes, but
yeah,
I love how I train. I don't want to change that.
Same.
The last one, there's nothing I can't do and have perfect bodybuilding. I just don't want to do normal life stuff. That's why I bodybuild.
Exactly.
Injured or sets. How many days of the year are you actually sick? Like 2% of them. That's the deload. food, I mean, I wouldn't be the bodybuilder I am if I didn't have to jam food. So that is what it is. Yeah, it's got to be drugs. I mean, that's the one thing we're all health supplements for. It's not because of the food. I mean, some digestion stuff, but it's the PEDs. Yeah. You're telling me I don't got to worry about heart, my kidney, my liver, or kidneys, right. Liver, all nothing. Yeah. I can take PEDs to work out. I'm good.
We'd probably have hair too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know what I'd be doing with it at this point anyway, but yeah, I think it's the drugs. I think anyone posed with, I mean, I'm trying to think if is there any case in which I would choose anything else. I
don't think so, because you have perfect metabolism and drug genetic that can carry you through.
Yeah, I could be, dude. We could be
other poor genetic factors.
Truthfully, that could like reestablish what your ceiling is as a bodybuilder. Like you could undoubtedly like expect to achieve much more if you were just going to bang drugs. And thinking about it, a healthy body is a productive body. So it's not even like, hey, I don't have to worry about dealing with these health ramifications down the road. I'm also assuming that it's like, hey, you're in perfect health. Now just do whatever you want. So it's not like you're going to be running on like, you know, redlining yourself and you're just taking all these drugs, but your health is in shambles, which is usually like part of the calculation. So yeah, I'm going with drugs, man. And I would do wacky shit. I would try it all. I would do everything at fucking 6,000 milligrams a week.
I'd tie it like with my meals.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'm going to do.
And I would be on probably 40 units of pharmacy growth a day just to see.
Yes. Absolutely.
Just to see. Right. We've heard all these guys, all these big time guys, Matt Jansen, all these guys say, hey, what's the best dosage for growth? They're like, however much you can afford.
Yeah. I just saw a pretty well-known amateur. I'm not gonna name drop it. He referred to himself pH junkie in a Q&A the other day. And I was like, hey man, own it.
Okay. Let me see what else I got. I got another question on cream of rice, which I think is interesting. And we kind of touched on what so I had somebody ask, is there such a thing as too much cream of rice? Just as a quick one, we did touch on this earlier. I think the only consideration, it pretty much digests great for everybody. So obviously that would be consideration number one. Number two, like we talked about, it is loaded with iron, and in enhanced bodybuilding, we see iron and, you know, different things come up. So that would be the only consideration. If your iron is high, your ferritin is high, and you're smashing a bunch of cream of rice, then maybe it's time to swap it out.
Yeah, that's the only consideration I would think. I mean, I've seen guys that are, I've always wondered that, 'cause I'm like, man, these guys are jamming like 2,000 grams a day, it seems like.
Dude, I'm eating troughs of cream of rice at this point.
I remember, well, this is rice, but for junior nationals last year, I want to say it was the day before the show, Cole Eastfold, we stayed together, so saw this. He had seven tips of rice the day before the show.
So how he had how much?
17 cups cooked. He was just a machine. Had no distension, no issues. I mean, it was probably over the course of like 14, 15 hours, but just a machine. His body was just like a furnace.
Dude, and he looked wild. I mean, that's one thing to tell that story. And then the guy looked like a fucking spilled over water buffalo on stage. I've seen and heard those stories. Like, this guy ate fucking, 9 sleeves of rice cakes before he went on stage. And it's like, yeah, it looks like it. His midsection looks like he ate 9 sleeves of rice cakes. But yeah, he looked insane, obviously won the whole show. And that's a guy, I think probably considered a favorite. He's doing USA's, no?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he would be tough to bet against. I like him, and I like Trey Adcock. Looks very good. He looks dangerous.
Very clean.
Yeah. Which those guys, I feel like the guys that are complete and symmetrical in person, they are by themselves. They're going to look good, but you don't realize how good someone is until they stand next to other people and other people's weaknesses start to stand out. And then you're like, oh, this guy has everything. That's kind of how I feel about that guy, Trey. Plus, he's got to be bringing it in. He's probably going to be bringing it in the mid to high 250s. I mean, that's a big dude.
Yeah.
What is Cole in shape?
Close? I don't know where he's at currently. I know last year he was a small, super heavy. I want to say like 232.
Okay.
Weigh in.
Think not unrealistic to think he probably put on a 10 spot. So
yeah.
Especially with the way he trains.
Yeah, I mean, all I know is like you can almost guarantee Cole be peeled. He'll be inside out. Last year. They've got it down.
And blasting full.
So,
and he's blasting full, like wild delts and arms. Like
Cole is a guy, like I've followed Cole. I've known Cole since like 2017, and he does not miss. I bet he could tell you over the last 5 years any instance why he's missed a meal. Like the birth of his third child would probably be one, but like he does not miss.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's what bodybuilding is, dude. That shit gets me fired up hearing that. Man, I don't know if you had anything else. I think we're about at an hour.
We're coming up on it. We can see if I got this is we could go for one, but let's just rapid fire a couple. So what is your diet, training, and supplement approach to one phase?
To which phase? Rebound phase?
Yeah, just coming out of a show, or I'm just coming out for somebody who doesn't compete, just coming out of a long cut.
Okay, I'll answer for the show phase because it's a much different thing to be all the way down ready for a show. My thoughts on this and approach on this has changed over the years. So initially I would just eat my face off. Like first couple shows, I would just eat until I was fat, basically. And then I got to a point where I was like very strict post show and did this very, very slow reverse diet to where even as I'm meticulously increasing calories, my body weight would continue to come down. And it's like, you're just in this prolonged deficit where you have these, like diet adaptations that you don't want, where your sleep is all fucked up and your libido is all messed up and all these things. So I've kind of taken now I think it probably makes sense to have an approach somewhere in the middle where you're seeing body weight rise pretty consistently and pretty aggressively for like the first 4 to 6 weeks or something. Because you're just not, you need to get to a healthy level of body fat before you can be productive in the gym, before you can think about growing new tissue, before you can think about having good sleep or having good sex or any of these things. Like you need to put a healthy chunk of body fat back on. But you also want to do so strategically so that you're not just a mess when it is time to start pushing again. But I think it probably makes sense to see someone's weight coming out of that first weekend out of the show be up like 5 to 7 pounds. And then every week from there forward, it should be up 2 or 3 pounds every time you check in. So you're looking at maybe from like the 4 to 6 week post show mark, you should be up like 20 pounds, I would say, depending on, maybe I should have given that as a percentage, like based on what you weigh, but for somebody like me, it's like 20 or 25 pounds. And then training the first week after the show, I mean, your peak week should basically be like a deload. So you should be set up and pretty excited to go train week 1. With that said, I'm probably not bringing anything to failure, and I'm going to do like least effective dose as far as volume is concerned, because you're set up to be pretty sensitive to training stimulus. So I'm pretty much going to use the week to like find the movements that I want to use, find the weights that I'm gonna be using, and I'm kind of just like resetting a logbook or resetting a baseline training wise. Once I get through that first training block, that might be 4 or 5 weeks, that should line up with when I'm starting to be like pretty much back to full tilt health wise and body fat wise. And then that next training block would be a little bit more aggressive with volume and taking things near and to failure. And then what was the other aspect of it? Drugs?
Yeah. So diet, training, subs.
Yeah. So gear, I would come off totally after the show. I stay on TRT, so I come back down to 140 milligrams of test per week. Because like we talked about, you're not building new tissue at that point. It's just a matter of like dialing everything in, health wise in, and getting your hormones right and getting excited about the process and all these different things. So, and this depends on blood work as well. Typically my blood work, even post show after a lot of drugs, is pretty immaculate. So, probably 8 weeks, like being down on TRT for 8 weeks, barring any bad blood work, that's when I would, start to slowly ramp things back up for like an off-season protocol. But I don't think that it makes a lot of sense, if health and longevity are part of your thought process, to have a 20 or 24 week prep where you blasted pretty heavy drugs the whole time, put yourself through a motherfucker of a diet where you're down at 3% body fat, and then come out of that and introduce more stress to your body with drugs. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. But there's a million and one ways to skin a cat. I know some guys that have done the show, immediately like change compounds, continued on a blast for 6 or 8 weeks, and then took time down. And a couple of these guys I know got wild results, but then they paid for it on the back end with their health, or having to step away from the bodybuilding process or from PEDs for a really extended amount of time because they were on for a really extended amount of time. So yeah, that's just how I do things. What has your experience been with all of them?
I mean, I've done it all. I've ate like an asshole. I've definitely reduced slowly, trying to only gain like 1 pound a week, and that's didn't yield anything. I think I agree with you nutritionally. Like, you just got to get body fat back up to where hunger's laced, but you're no longer food focused. Like, that's a big thing. It's time to eat. I'll eat, but I'm not thinking about food. Because for me, if like I don't have cravings year round, I like my simplicity. I like my diet. I like to feel good digestion wise. So if I'm in that mode, I know my body fat's okay. So that's kind of where I try to get to. I don't ever have like a weight goal or like it's on how in shape you got to. I remember in 2007, I got inside out peeled, like probably to the point where I didn't need to be, and starving on 8 meals a day, like a few weeks post show. And I was up 20 pounds and I still had lines in my glutes. So it was a really cool process to see. Training, I mean, I think I've touched on this on a previous episode, but that first week I just kind of have fun. I don't really have any goals. I'm just getting blood moved. And then by the second week, I'm back on a full plan. I've already hammered something out. Supplements, I've come completely off, where I stopped taking. I didn't even go on a TRT. I did that for a few weeks, and then I had gotten blood work in that period, so I saw everything was good, and then to go back on a cycle of just test. I have dropped all other anabolics other than test and stayed at on 750 before coming out of a prep. Okay. I've went straight to TRT post show, stayed there for 8 to 10 weeks. So again, I think blood work's going to kind of dictate it. And then what's your long-term plan? Where are you going from here? Are you competing next year? Like, kind of doesn't make sense if you're going to compete 1 year from now and you just prep and you're going to stay on a cycle another weeks, because then you're going to have to eventually come off for some period of time. And then you're kind of cutting your off short because you extended a rebound where I've learned you probably don't need as much anabolics as you think post show. So food's your known driver, food and training. So if anything, maybe just the test is the one thing in or higher for me personally.
How did it feel coming totally off? Like told pretty miserable?
No, because I've done that before, and right around I stopped it short. We start to feel miserable. So 3 weeks of being off of test is when I start to feel like absolute shit.
Yeah.
So I started my prep point last year. It's 6 weeks of TRT, and then this has never happened to me in my life, but somehow I ran, and I don't know if I just like miscounted or what, but like, so I was like, shit, I'm out. And then it became like, all right, well, still prep starts. Let's just see how this goes. Let's just not use anything, no injections. I'll let my muscles heal, all that. And like a personal challenge. And it not only did my body comp suffer, but dude, I felt like shit, digestion. Yeah. I don't even know if it was mental, because what was crazy is like I put weight on my back that I ever have still to this day on the hack squat during that phase. Obviously, I think it was because I had Dusty there, but it was just one of those things where life just sucked outside of training. Your pumps are mediocre at best, and you so I won't be doing that again. But it was
what was the thing? Have you ever had someone that has said to you that you need to come totally off to clear the receptor?
I've never had someone tell me that. But I've heard that.
For anybody listening, if anyone says that to you, just fucking run in the other direction, because it doesn't make any sense.
I have a whole episode on come off and prop, like, I guess your PCT.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, for sure. One of the parts of that will definitely not be clearing the receptor, though. I heard Dave Palumbo say that so many times on a podcast, and it's not the best advice, not the best description of what's really going on.
Not accurate.
Yeah, that's about as accurate as him saying on YouTube to his 100K plus followers that anabolic steroids are not toxic compounds, after a bunch of people have died and shit. Wild scene. But if Dave does hear this by some chance, appreciate everything that you do for the community, Dave. Just don't say stupid shit like that anymore.
And on that note,
we're going to go ahead and wrap this up before we get canceled. So, I think that's everything. Good. I like the Q&A session. I like being able to get people get their question answered. I think that's a cool little piece of the podcast where we have like these kind of this cool community of people that care to write in and hear what we say. So much appreciated to everybody for that. So for Tommy Stiles, I'm Joseph PIRCHER, and this was a Thinking Man's podcast.